Hi, here's an R4B that I've been working on, and the preselector has been a little stubborn. So this radio has been sitting here for a couple of days, and I'll use it when I'm working just to listen to people talking once in a while for some distraction. But let me go through how I fix this thing. So now it finally has a full range of motion all through its travel. It didn't before. It used to stick. So when you fix these Drake preselectors, this is how I do it. And so I'll go through. Okay, first of all, this part here puts tension on this cable assembly. So the further down this is, well, let's think about that. Yeah, if you really push that down, it'll push the pulleys down. So the way I approached this thing was simple. First, you disconnect the cable from the slugs. So I took these screws out, and now the slugs were free floating. And you want to basically make sure these move well. And in my case, these slugs were kind of bent that way. So the first thing I did with this one was you take off these clamps on the main cable. You make sure the slugs will move well. If they don't, you correct that. And how do you do that? Well, usually these things aren't in straight. So in my case, I just really took the tension off this cable by disconnecting it from the drive assembly, and then pushed this whole thing left, so the slugs kind of bent that way. The actual wire assemblies that hold these slugs, I kind of bent them over that way to get them to finally come true and straight. They were kind of bent that way. So that's the first thing I did. The second thing was some good old WD-40. So these pulleys can stick. I just put some WD-40 behind these pulleys to make sure they were all good. I did put some WD-40 on this big shaft here. And what else? There's a pulley down in here that I hit with WD-40. So you don't know, because you can't take the cable off very easily, and you don't want to. You don't know what's sticking, but did all that, and then without these slugs attached, I ran it through its full range of motion, and it still wouldn't work. It still had a bind around 15 meters, and around 80 meters it had a bind. So believe it or not, this was counterintuitive, but I thought the actual bearings in this device, and I'm trying to get the camera on this thing to show you where it is. So there's a little device down here which is actually the friction assembly that turns that shaft, and I'm trying to get it in the camera here. But anyway, there's bearings in there, and well, here, we can do it this way. Okay, there it is. So you can see the bearings in there, and I greased it. So it's counterintuitive, but if this thing is not greased or has old grease, it can be binding internally. So I put some synthetic grease in this thing, and here's where the grease is. Get the camera in here, so let me point to it. So I just packed some synthetic grease into here and kept turning it back and forth, back and forth. It eventually went through its full range of motion. And then I thought, okay, this thing is good to go. Looks like somebody had tried to fix it with pliers and stuff. I don't know. So actually packing these with grease is helpful in my experience. And then I made sure these pulleys were not binding on the side here. So I just pulled this whole shaft, but you want these pulleys to really self-center. So you want to make sure that this pulley has a little bit of wiggle room between the pulley and the frame here, which is really, you want to make sure there's a slight gap right there, which there is. And this one has a larger gap, but that's really how it self-centers. So you can see how with that string there or wire, it looks pretty darn straight now. And these clips, you don't want these clips that are on the other side of the screw. You don't want those clips to bind on the frame. So this clip here on this side, I actually had to put it in vertically to catch the cable in the right spot. And this clip here I put in horizontally, as it seemed like it was a longer travel. So that all worked out fine. And then you want to give a look at these slugs and make sure that they're looking prim and proper, and they're not skewed to one side or the other. So they do look straight finally. So you want to make sure, first of all, this bar and these slugs are straight. And then once they are straight, moving correctly, you want to very carefully then engage it to the cable. And the way I set these was, you want to pretty much put the dial, first of all, you want to make sure this little dial preselector goes to 0 exactly. So take it down to 0 till it stops. And make sure it's actually, first of all, calibrated to 0. And so you should see it pretty much on 0. This one's actually a tad off, so maybe I'll fix it. But anyway, at least on this one, I took it to about 160. And I had it set right about here. And right about there, you would have all the slugs at base. So sure enough, you can check the slugs out now. And they're pretty close to base. So you want to make sure that these are all exactly with the sleeves on both sides. And sometimes you can just use a screwdriver and just gently see if there's a gap here or not. Anyway, once those are, I did it visually, once those are all set, then you can gingerly put this cable back on and make sure you don't mess up the alignment. And then make it go through a full range of travel and make sure it works. So just travel it up and down. Make sure, this thing's still a little funny around 15 meters, and looks like is it done here? Yeah, it's working, so I guess this one's fixed. Can go through a whole range of travel now without too much worry. So I'm really happy about that. Okay, what else? Well, that solves that. So again, you want to make sure these are going in straight. You want to take this cable off first, take them off the driver cable, just go up and down manually and see if they're binding binding or not, and make sure they're straight before you put the cable back on. So make sure this bar and these little springy things that hold these slugs, make sure they are straight with no cable connected. Make sure these pulleys are lined up and that they are free to move with some WD-40, and make sure they're not binding on the side. Check the pulleys in the bottom down in there too. You see there's a pulley that's way down in here that can bind, so make sure that's got some WD-40. And you want to run these pulleys through a few times before you do anything, because they can have rust and binding spots too. And then once that's all done, you're probably good to go. Oh, and then once you're all done here, you want to go through and tune all these capacitors again and all the LC circuits. So you want to go through and just tune these all up again. I just put the radio on the middle of the band, so at 2.50 or .250 on either band. I'll just go to all the bands and go .250 on 10 meters. You want to pretty much go to the high side of the 28.5, and then because you might get a 29 crystal or something later. So I just tuned it that way, and it's reasonable now. So I'll show you now how it looks reasonable. So here's the radio again, and yeah, I've been using this for the past couple of days, well, past week almost now, and it's like, sit here and listen, and it was a struggle to make it work with the slugs all messed up. But anyway, here's 80 meters, and I can just cruise down at 80, and it'll perk up right around 80. Let's see, volume. And that's what you want, so lower part of 80. I'll go to 250 here. Right about there, 40 meters. That's what you want there. A little bit of noise on 40. 20 on this thing's a little flaky. I gotta take it apart and clean the switch, but 20 is a little flaky. But now it's working. The more these switches are turned, the better off they end up, so. They self-clean. Okay, 15 meters. So that's about what you want. And here's 10. 10 should be going up a ways, I guess. Let's see. No, it doesn't. Anyway, there's 10, so pretty happy with it. Let's go to 20 here. See, sometimes it won't work, so wiggle it. There we go. I did take the spinner out and clean it and grease it, so the spinner now is very nice. This spinner is a great addition. I've never seen one with a spinner. I guess some guy added this thing. What else? Oh yeah, I gotta fix this too. I'll show you that in a minute. Let's go to 40 here real quick. There's 40 meters, go down to 40. 40 sounds kind of dead. Let's see here. So there's people on here to listen to. And now it's a lot easier to use. So I gotta fix this thing. So this really should have a low noise here, and then it should go like that on 2.4, and it doesn't. So I gotta get this fixed. But here we are, and listen to how this works. Yeah, it's just not right. So that needs work. So I think something's binding in here. Anyway, when you're off to the left 9 o'clock position here, the slugs in the back should be all the way out. So the 4 slugs back here should be all the way out. There's one right there to watch. So I turn this guy. I've got to steady my hand here. You can see these slugs are moving out. So at 9 o'clock, they're going to be on the way out. Okay, that's about it. I hope this is enjoyable, at least to watch. Looks like my camera's upside down. That's not real fun either. Okay, well, I do get topsy-turvy here with this thing, shooting different angles. So that's the Drake R4B, the most recent one I have. Needs a bit of cleanup. I've just been using it and entertaining myself while I'm working at my job. Okay, thanks for watching. Have a great day.